We'll probably hire
Stream has started.
Yeah, it's like,
Let me turn up. Hey, how y'all doing? That's the right amount of energy for like the first nice day all year 2019. So thank you for that outpouring of energy. Welcome to DenverScript. Woo! Nailed it. Yeah. How many for you is this your first time at a DenverScript? Oh wow, sweet. Sweet. That's awesome. Thank you for coming. Thanks for being here. I'm Mike.
I'm Guillermo. Good to meet you. We are not Matt. For those of you that how many of you is not your first time? So yeah, so those of you might realize that we are not Matt.
Yeah.
No explanation. That's it. Just we are not Matt. And we move on.
Yeah. So let's move on. We can't do this without sponsors. So the place sponsoring the venue where you're at right now is Code Talent. Are you all familiar with Code Talent? Some of you. If you're not, talk to Kevin after this.
And then Kevin's also going to come up and talk about a couple of job announcements they have, so you'll have a chance to hear more about them.
Things? Yeah. You can thank Go Spot Check for the food. Yeah. Since Matt's not here, we don't need to tell you what Go Spot Check is, so let's move on.
Is that how it works?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Every time he talks about Go Spot Check. We can thank Epic Brewing for giving us a discount on beer. The beer is also sponsored by Code Talent, which is where you're at right now. They sponsor the venue. You can also talk to Kevin if you have more questions about what Code Talent actually is.
And actually, Kevin will be up here a little bit later talking about job announcements they have too. So you have a chance to hear that as well.
This sounds very important. This has been repeated twice, possibly 3 times. Just be on the lookout for that. And we can thank Denver Pizza Company for a discount on the pizza. Yeah. This is the right amount of energy. I'm excited. Oh, this is all you.
Is it?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Front End Masters. We have a sponsor from Front End Masters as well, and we'll be giving out a couple of Front End Masters trial subscriptions. How many people here have heard of Front End Masters before? Oh, sweet. So most of you. Thank you. The one guy applauding. But, no, you nailed it. Everybody else should have applauded. No, yeah, so Front End Masters, a really cool site. They have a lot of good content on there, from shallow dives to deep dives on simple and complex topics. So whether you're a junior, mid, or senior level, there's all kinds of stuff you can find on there. And if you participate in our next section, you might get a trial membership to Front End Masters.
Maybe. We'll see.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, this worked out so well. All right, so moving on to the next thing. What is going on in JS land?
Yeah.
Oh man, here we go. This is gonna be fun.
All right, so while he pulls that up, for those of you that are new, there's a section we have called What's Going On in JavaScript Land. So we talk about some of the things that we're excited about that's going on in the broader JavaScript community. We encourage you to also participate with things that you're excited about. So we do this every month, and every 6 weeks, there's a new Chrome that comes out, which means new Chrome dev tools. So every other meetup, I get to get excited to talk about what I'm excited about, which is new Chrome DevTools stuff. So As always, all of this stuff will be linked in the conversation chat that is in this month's meetup. So don't feel like you have to write a bunch of stuff down. This will all be there. And then also, as you guys also submit stuff to us here while we have this conversation, we'll continue to flush that out after the fact with relevant links and all those things. But so here's what I'm excited about. Chrome 73 came out. The release notes are there, and there's a highlights video. The stuff that I'm going to go over, if you watch that highlights video, they go over it as well and give some cool code examples and stuff. But some of the interesting stuff, log points are really neat. They allow for in-flight logging without having to add a console. So, okay, how many of you guys have seen, any of you here when I did my conditional breakpoints talk, like last year? Oh, sweet, like 2 people remember. That's fantastic. So conditional breakpoints, basically you can tell that they like built this on top of conditional breakpoints. Like before, you used to have to go set a breakpoint, make it conditional, and then in there for the JavaScript execution, write console.log this thing, comma false, so it wouldn't actually stop there, but it would log the thing. So now they made it way easier, where instead you find the line of code that you want to add some logging for, and without having to either modify your source code, or if for some reason you don't have access to that source code, right? Like let's say it's a deployed server. You can right-click on the line of code that you want to add some logging for, and then when you right-click it, some options will pop up. You select Add Log Point, and then you just put what it is that you want to log at that point, and then when it runs by it in the code, it'll run exactly as if you had added a console log in there. Without you having to go and then add a whole bunch of them and maybe you forget about them. Or again, if you didn't have access to it because it's a remote distributed, remote server production. What's up?
So like left click is still at Docker, right click is option?
Yeah, good question. So Mal is asking if for the breakpoints, right? It's like left click is just adding a breakpoint and right click is options. Yes, so in Chrome DevTools, when you just click on a line, it'll just add a standard breakpoint. At that point, you can either right-click that breakpoint and it gives you options on how to modify that breakpoint, or if you just right-click it from the start, it'll just ask you what kind of a breakpoint do you want to put here. And one of those options now is this log point. So I thought it was kind of cool. If you look at it, once you put it in place, the breakpoint, instead of being a traditional blue one, is like an orange-colored one, which is the same way conditional breakpoints look. So clearly, they just built this on top of their conditional breakpoints and made it like some syntactic sugar, but it's way easier. I thought it was super cool. So inspecting DOM nodes, this has been a theme over the past like 3 to 6 months. They keep enhancing things about the inspector when you're viewing DOM nodes and highlighting all these different things, and they keep adding like niceties to it. One of them is that now when you're inspecting a DOM node, a little like tooltip pop-up comes up, and it gives you the information on like the most common things that people usually are looking for when they're looking at DOM elements. So it'll tell you what kind of tag it is, the color, font size, margin, those kinds of things. Code coverage data. I don't get into like exactly how to do this, but if you watch the video, it shows you. DevTools has a feature where if you run it in their analytics tool, it shows you how much of your code that you have deployed is actually being used, right? So you have an idea of, for all this stuff that we're deploying and shipping, how much of it is just stale code paths that never get reached. You can now export that as a JSON file, and then you can inspect that later for offline analysis, the results of that. The console can now be navigated on the keyboard. For you people that, I think this is a very developer engineering kind of thing where you try and see how much you can possibly do without using your mouse. The console in DevTools has now enhanced navigation with just from the keyboard. And another thing they've been building out for a while for accessibility is when you click on the color picker, they used to have this one line that showed you a AA rating of whether it is readable or not from accessibility standard standpoints. They've now added 2 lines, and that bottom line is a AAA, very readable. So if you're concerned about accessibility, and I feel like most people should be, or if you're just kind of choosing a color and you don't know which one to go with, this has a nice little thing to help. What they're showing in this example that I screenshotted, above that line, it's showing you that like, hey, this thing's not very readable. It's kind of hard to see. Between the 2 is AA, and below that is AAA. So that's pretty cool. Custom geolocation overrides can now be saved. These are things when you want to make it seem like when you're doing your testing, like if you're from another location. And this one's kind of neat. Sources in the network panel, now they both enable code folding. So you just enable a little flag, and if you have these big blocks of stuff that you never use or cluttering your screen, you can fold them down so you can look at just the blocks that you need. So I always get really excited about new DevTools stuff. That's what I'm excited about this month. What are you guys excited about? So, and now we have a couple things here. Do you want to talk about this one, the pipeline operator?
Oh yeah, the pipeline operator is still in stage 1, so no new movement on that. So
So,
everybody knows.
for those of you that have been coming every month, this has been the same bullet point every month, but it will be very exciting when it moves past stage 1, and then Mike can say, hey, it is now past stage 1. So that being said, the bottom is sort of the more traditional stuff we used to always ask, like any new stuff come out, any news, anything you heard about that you're excited about. But on top of that, though, is there any like high five exciting moments that you personally had? It doesn't have to be a new framework; it could be just new to you, or a new pattern that you found, or a new anything really. What are you guys excited about this month? Anything at all?
Oh, I'll start.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, young man.
Yes. So I started working on a VS Code extension to like use keybind. Yeah, Brent, to do like some key bindings to run some test scripts at work. It's been neat, and then I had to sign up for Azure DevOps, which was not neat for whatever reason. So that kind of, sucked today. But yeah, that's what I've been working on. I felt pretty good about that.
Any recommendations for people that are working on VS Code extensions, like good material that you found, or
find an extension that you like and then just copy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's how I learn how to code, right?
Yeah, right. You all are laughing,
Right.
or maybe not laughing.
Cool.
That's the way that I did it.
Sweet. Well, what are you guys excited about?
Talk slow. I'm slow typing.
Yes.
Just started working with HLS.js, some HTTP live streaming video.
Oh, awesome. HLS.js. That's awesome. How do you like it so far?
Really hard, but it's also pretty cool and can do a lot of really cool stuff with live streaming video.
Awesome. Thank you for being the first brave soul to raise your hand aside from Mike. So you got a 3-month membership to Front-End Masters. Thank you very much. So we do this every month. The first person to raise their hand gets a 3-month membership to Front-End Masters. Front-End Masters, I believe, like $32, $33 a month. So it's like $100 value, so that's pretty cool. So keep the ideas and stuff you're excited about coming, and we'll give out 2 more at the end of the meetup today. So what else are you guys excited about? Yes?
We started incorporating React Spring. It's awesome.
React Spring?
React Spring, so it's a transition library.
Okay.
We've been using some material steppers, transition library for CSS transitions. It's just a dope library where we showed it to our customer-facing team and customers. The reaction was significantly different from the things we handle and other libraries. So
Oh, yes. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little slow. Yes, so specifically for animation transitions and stuff, right?
For animations, it does drag and drop, it does
Yeah.
overlays, it does all kinds of awesome stuff out of the box. And the physics engine is incredible, super great library.
Super cool. We actually had, so if anybody's interested in what he just mentioned, React Spring animation between transitions and things, we had a speaker who gave a really good talk on that last year. I want to say in like October, November. All of our live streams are saved, so if that's something you're interested in, we have more on that, or talk to Matt about that. What else are you guys excited about? So there's a hand over here. Yes.
Not like JavaScript related, but I heard from my instructor that CSS is making nesting CSS or plain CSS too. That's really cool.
Yeah. Did you? Does anybody else heard about that? Like, when, or do you know?
Is it like select nested?
Yeah, like the way how like with less you can have like
Yeah.
nested selectors, and then it just compiles down to the for you. But like that CSS is working on building that into native CSS. So that's pretty cool. What?
Nothing. I'm just trying to follow along as best I can.
You're doing great, man.
Yeah, thank you.
What else are you guys excited about? It can be as broad or specific as you like. Yes.
I was pretty stoked on those points today, so I was showing like 3 console boxes and breakpoints.
Oh.
And then I realized that hard options there.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, right? Like if you it's like the walking uphill in the snow both ways kind of thing. Like if you don't know the pain of having to write a console log expression into a conditional breakpoint, then you won't necessarily know how much nicer this is, but just trust us, it's really great. That you know, and yeah, anyway. Yes, nice.
Yeah, the thing I was going to mention was over the last month, I've been learning more about application security.
Mhm.
And today I'm just excited to go over what I learned.
Sweet. Perfect. So you don't even need to elaborate if
Right.
you're going to.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you'll see.
Yes.
So it's currently a stage 2 proposal, but JavaScript is coming out with private methods and private fields. So it's still being discussed, but yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, pretty cool. It's gonna start with a hashtag, or that's the kind of like the proposal right now, but.
That's definitely very interesting. You should do a talk on the current state of the proposal of, I'm being serious, of like private methods in JavaScript. That'd be really cool. Yeah. That's really interesting. Curious to see that. Yes.
So again, I think you guys are talking about it later, but I've been doing a lot of research on React hooks and specifically using hooks with the context API to try and get rid of Redux.
Yeah.
So, watching a lot of videos.
Are there any good resources or videos that you found that were really helpful, like as you were getting up to speed on the React hook stuff?
I mean, I feel like it's over the last couple of weeks. It seems like everybody's got a new
Right.
article or video or something about it.
Right.
Nothing specific, just like I said, just all the videos. There you go.
I would suggest.
Perfect.
I would suggest checking out Dan Abraham's blog called overreacting.io. And he has a really good article right now about making your components more resistant to change, resilient to change. So, and he really goes into depth about React hooks. It's really cool.
Awesome.
There's a really great ESLint package that just came out too with that. It helps you understand the dependency array and what needs to change in your dependency array when you're running a hook. And it's also going to help structure it, and VS Code will autocomplete your dependency array for you. So it's all the things that are sufficient compiler and sandbox that exist now. It's
Nice. What's cool about that too, about Dan Abramoff specifically, writing blogs about this stuff, is that, like, for you guys who don't know, he's the guy who created Redux. So it says a lot. The guy who created the most popular state management library in React is kind of like, okay, but here's where we should all be going. So yeah, good suggestions. Yeah.
Shameless plug. I got a blog, but it's kind of what I'm talking about.
Great.
It's written through on test-driven blog, and then for the state management, I'm working on the blog right now, the contents, the users, finding those, especially.
Awesome. If you don't have links to that stuff in your talk, then make sure that when you do the links to your stuff in the meetup notes that you link that as well. This is really good stuff, guys. What else? There's all we've had a lot of sort of like big framework level, like industry level stuff people have found. What about like individual things that just something that you were working on and you discovered that you were excited
Has anybody had like an aha moment over the last month?
Yeah, they were like, oh, okay, that's why we use Triple E. Yeah.
So we use a lot of the React table component.
Okay.
And one of the requirements for it, or one of the questions was if we can make the column order course and drag and drop. So I made a system, or essentially a high order component that enabled it. And also we were having a lot of troubles deploying our Docker image to Kubernetes cluster because it's hosted on-prem, so it's not AWS or anything.
Right.
And I've been fighting with configuration scripts for weeks and finally have that figured out. So,
Yes. That's the best feeling, isn't it? Finally. Great. Congratulations, man. That's fantastic. Any other just fun wins from this month? Yeah.
I've been learning about Firebase
Mhm.
and actually have front-end masters in this new database API that they've got. I really want
The Cloud Firestore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah. If you can wrap your head around their pseudo JavaScript for like the auth rules, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting to that part. I'm about halfway through.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, if you guys haven't played around with Firebase's Cloud Firestore, it's free. It's provided by Google with their product. It has an auto integration to all their other services, and it's push based. So instead of having to like query your database all the time and ask it for its latest state, you just subscribe to it once, and it opens up a socket and just sends you the latest information as it happens.
They let you do a lot before you have to pay it too. It's pretty
Oh yeah. The threshold for how much data you have to use before you start paying it is pretty high.
Ryan Florence has published a package that integrates it with Gatsby. It just hooks up Firebase, not called Firestore yet, but it's like out of the box, hooks up with Firebase, and it's rad.
Awesome. Any other personal wins that you're really excited about? You couldn't tell your friends or partner about because they wouldn't understand. You want to share with us? That's why we're here. Come on, let's do one more. one more exciting moment, or yes, you already went.
Yeah, I was trying to wrap my head around like CSS transitions, finally got the whole transform and kind of going on, which is really awesome. And it's just way easier than I was
Yeah.
figure out all libraries and packages and really relying.
Yeah.
So it's on this too. It's just
Awesome. Oh yeah. Very cool. So yeah, so thanks a lot, guys. So what we'll do is we got a lot of really great stuff here. At the end of the meetup, if you were one of the ones who raised your hand, come up at the end, and then we'll do sort of like a random sort, and then 2 of the people who submit stuff will also get front-end master's trials. So thanks so much for doing that. Aside from being able to sort of share what we're excited about, as you heard all these really cool things that people were saying and raising their hand about and sharing, the other reason why we do this is because, for example, you were saying you were dealing with like transitions, and USI was doing a really good transition library, right? So this is why we talk about this kind of stuff. The person next to you may have mentioned something that you've been thinking about or wondering about or dealing with for a while. Approach each other after. Our talks portion is actually pretty short in the meetup, and we have a lot of pizza and beer left over. So definitely, you don't need to be a speaker to be able to like impart wisdom back and forth. So definitely help each other out. That's part of why we do this. So cool.
Yeah. And I will try to go back and add in intelligence to this, as you can see. I'll try to find links. If you have links, if you were one of the ones that talked, let me know, and then I'll add those in there. But this will also be posted to the meetup page probably tomorrow. So
yes. Sweet.
All right.
Awesome.
Move in on to
job announcements. You want to go first? Okay. Come on up.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming. I'm a founder here at Code. If you don't know what we do, we're an IT staffing company working primarily with local startups. Some of them have grown up. iTriage was acquired and is now a huge digital arm for Aetna. Ibotta, Guild Education are just monsters of companies now, but startups is kind of our bread and butter. Wanted to share something kind of interesting. Over the last few years, I think we've kind of had more or less even numbers of React and Angular positions we're working on. Right now, it's like 15 React roles to 2 Angular positions. Just thought that was a, kind of interesting thing I have from a perspective that you all might not know about. In particular, I want to talk about one position with a really cool client of ours called Apply in downtown Denver. They are a 9-person data analytics startup. They're looking for their first dedicated front-end developer. They're an Angular shop. Right now, they have a bunch of Python developers doing Angular, and it's slowing them down. Please talk to me if that's something you'd be interested in. It does have to be pretty senior since you'd be the front-end person, but really cool role. They prefer to bring someone on full-time salary. They're open to contractors as well. But yeah, that's it. And like I said, I have a bunch of Reacts and Node roles. So if you're looking for a job, feel free to send me an email. I have some cards up here, back on the table there. Yeah, thank you.
all right, anyone else?
Come on up. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we started doing this thing where we ask you to come to the front for 2 reasons. 1, people that are watching the live stream can actually see you and hear you better. And 2, for any of you sitting in the audience who might want to touch base with somebody here but just missed them for some reason, the live stream gets posted straight to YouTube right after. So you can go back and check up on what it was you heard and what their name was. So make sure you guys also say your contact information too. Your cards are here. Make sure you say your contact information so people can find you after.
I don't have a card, but my email is charles.lim@us.panasonic.com. I'm with Panasonic, obviously, me and Chris, the guy in the blue back there. We are on the front-end team with Panasonic automotive group, and what we're doing is we're doing a lot of IoT stuff, so a lot of large data streams coming from cars ingested into data platform, and we're looking for a strong React developer who is strong at testing, TypeScript, style components, all that good stuff. Big plus, if you have any kind of light DevOps experience, we are AWS shop, so any kind of infrastructure as code experience is big and very helpful. We're growing pretty fast. We're targeting mostly experienced developers, but if you have a couple years or pretty confident in your tool set, then let me know. But yeah, we're always hiring strictly for front end. But yeah,
Where are your offices?
by the airport, which kind of sucks, but there is a commute's a little rough. But if you want, there is an A-line train directly from Union Station to Pirzada. It's one stop before the airport. I know Chris takes it, no complaints. I commute, I drive, but we also have a work from home policy. So 2 days a week, you can work from home, or even every day of the week, work from home. We only ask you to come into the office if there's in-person meetings and things like that. Beyond front end, we are looking for back end and full stack developers. So we're mostly Golang, but you do Node, we have Python. Again, if you're heavily invested in AWS infrastructure, it's kind of a big plus for us. We're all CloudFormation. So yeah, if you're interested, talk to me or talk to Chris. I'll be sticking around for a little bit, but otherwise, shoot me an email at charles.lim@us.panasonic.com. I can write it down somewhere or here as well.
Cool, thanks.
Hey y'all, I'm Matt. I'm a front-end developer at a place called Ombud. We have an intelligent collaboration platform. So basically enterprise software for people to Google information about themselves. It's really awesome. Yeah, right? We're looking for front-end developers, React, all JavaScript, Redux, Sagas, all that good stuff. Node.js developers, full stack. We're looking for QA lead, QA engineers, and product managers, product owners. If you have any questions, want to talk to me, get me. It's also matthew.hooper@ombud.com.
Sweet.
Take it a roll.
Everybody, I mentioned this last month, but I work at SendGrid. We were recently acquired by Twilio, and we have kind of open positions across the board. I'm on the front end team there. I work on the marketing campaigns product. My name is Alex Abreu, so it's alex.abreu, A-B-R-E-U at SendGrid. So if you're into React, TypeScript, Redux, Redux observables, email me. We'd love to talk to you. We have a bunch of open positions. We're trying to grow to by 1,000 this year, so we need a lot of people. So yeah, please contact me.
Behind your computer.
No worries.
We're at Trace 3. We're hiring DevOps engineers, so a little different than front-end developers, but Kubernetes experience, CI/CD, Jenkins, systems administration. Basically, either you're on the ops side and you're looking to get into development, or you're on the development side and you've been managing production. But we're looking for a lot of people.
What was your name again?
Oh, sorry. Eric Class.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks.
Sweet. Anyone else? All right.
Time is 40. Got like 5 minutes, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we got like 5 minutes. I've got the mic. You have to listen to me. We've got 5 minutes. Go get some more pizza. Go get some more beer. Get some water if you need that. But after that, Farman will be up to talk about OWASP stuff. Perfect. We'll leave it at that. Hello. How are you? Okay, one last thing. If you are interested in giving a talk, if you want to give your first talk, want to practice a talk for, let's say, Dino.js or whatever, talk to Guillermo or me after this, and we'll get you set up for later this year.
I'm listening.
Oh, yeah. I will sign while somebody just I
appreciate it. Hey, come on.
Okay. Sorry. Are you?
Yeah. So you can do the.
Yeah, if you just write it down.
Because
You can put it to meet up this month too.
No, it's going from contract to hire.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna lose all my life. We did like a tour of this winery, and then like got like the cheese platter. It's like overlooking the winery. He's such a cool dude. Yes.
I always have wanted to go, but I didn't work for anyone. So like, so I was remote the whole time. So my whole thing was like, so many different things. I love it here. So the idea was I've been here like it's like not yeah. It's doing boring stuff. Here's the grocery store it is. Over here, history of the so that's when you're just like, super sick, and you
All right, grab a seat or stand, whatever you want to do, but Farman is going to talk to us now about the top 10 cross-site scripting things. All right.
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is loud enough? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. If we could really quick, let's just give a round of applause to Mike, Guillermo, and Kevin for helping us put this on tonight. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. So tonight I'm going to be going over OWASP top 10 XSS. I realize that's a lot of abbreviations right there. So one thing I wanted to do was just ask the crowd if anybody knows what OWASP stands for.
I used to that.
Oh, really quick. Awesome. Okay, that's good. Okay, good. So OWASP, it stands for Open Web Application Security Project. A couple of folks decided to come up with a standard approach to building and maintaining applications so that people like us who want to develop or even use them will have a very secure application. So what they also came up with were top 10 vulnerabilities. They categorized them by attacks. Tonight, we're going to go over XSS, which stands for cross-site scripting. And just a quick profile on who I am. My name is Farman Pirzada. I have been at Staples for 2 years as an analyst, where I do risk assessment, root cause analysis, you know, the kind of fun business stuff that we all love to do. One of my biggest interests lately has been actually breaking applications. I used to do a lot more web development in small and mid-sized startups, but now I'm more interested in breaking them. And just a little fun fact, OWASP is actually a project that went online on December 1st, which happens to be my birthday, if anyone was interested to know that.
Yeah, that's my birthday.
It's also his birthday back
Oh,
there.
great, awesome, well, great.
All right.
I love this crowd too, it's really good. I really feel better about myself. So, what exactly is a cross-site scripting attack? I wanted to demonstrate that using a journey map. This one provided is from an application scanner called Checkmarks, bless you. And this one I can go over really quick, but what's happening here is in a cross-site scripting attack, the attacker will try and look for any open injection points, whether it's going to be the document object model, the URL, the HTTP header. Mainly, it's going to try and look, he or she is going to try to look for an injection point on the client's side. When they're able to find that and identify it, they will come up with some kind of malicious script. Generally, it's a JavaScript element tag these days because some applications are still vulnerable to that. What that could mean is that the attacker would be able to do things like send spam, send mass IMs. I wouldn't be surprised if some folks have actually dealt with this before, but another really big thing is clickjacking. So it's really, the gist is that they want to be able to take control of the user, whether it's their data, their access. And so tonight what I wanted to focus on was the URL. And so in this journey map, when the user does click on a URL, basically in return, the attacker will now have full control. So what exactly does this look like in a real world application? While this is loading, I'll just quickly explain. This is uploaded by a security researcher who actually found a bug on this website called coos.com, which is a apparel site. And as you can see right here, right now, he is trying to figure out where he can get a opening with the URL. So as he's trying to go through it, you can see right now what he's highlighting, just what he's just about to highlight, is there is a URL fragment, that equal sign, and further. What he can do now is take advantage of that opening. In this situation, he's going to make an image tag. The source doesn't matter to him. It's really just the error message. Once he gets that down, we'll just see quickly what happens. He's going to try and just send an alert that will send a message on document.domain. There you go. That's not something that should happen. And one big important thing with this is that I realize this is not the most interesting vulnerability right here. This particular proof of concept this security researcher is providing is so that he can find the minimum viable vulnerability to send over to this company. It's really big for security researchers to make big bucks on bug bounties. So what really could happen if you wanted to be a little more malicious is that instead of returning that window.domain, he could get something like window.cookie, view the log events on his side, and get that cookie that he can copy and paste on his end so that he can log into the user's session, go into that account on coos.com, and just buy all the shopping needs that he wants to. So that's where it really comes from. That's why it's something to be more considerate about. Now, one solution is that you can prevent this attack with frameworks. Is there anyone who doesn't use web frameworks at their office, at their company? Okay, good. Because there's another solution, but I knew this one was going to be more relevant. So you can use React, you can use Angular, you can use Vue, but you really shouldn't rely 100% on assuming that technology will resolve everything. React is a great example because it does use syntax like JSX, to prepare for cross-site scripting attacks. But if you actually look at their GitHub repository page, if you were to view their open issues, cross-site scripting is constantly being talked about. I mean, there's 4 open issues right here. They're all workarounds. So the solutions they have are basically temporary. And they have all acknowledged that, you know, we're still trying to work on it, but this is what you can do, which is very telling about cross-site scripting. It's common, it looks easy, it looks like something you could just go home and figure out, but it's gotten so advanced, and that's why it's really important to get educated on application security. Not just only would you have a good skill set, but it's great to better understand your code infrastructure and know what kind of attacks are out there so that you don't have to worry about losing all the money that you would invest in with third-party pen testers, third-party security testers. One other thing I would advise, and I think this would be even better, is aside from preventing, you can always prepare for this attack. I'm just assuming here that everyone is using agile management. So if you're creating user stories, that's actually great context to come up with something that, I forget the person's name, but they call it abuser stories. So in this particular situation, this user story is different from what you saw. But as a customer, I want to be able to add a review of the product so that information about products can be shared between customers. That can segue into 2 different ways that an attacker could potentially find the vulnerabilities. And this one takes a little bit more creativity to come up with abuser stories. It's another skill set that's kind of up and coming in security called threat hunting, where you're basically thinking in the mind of a hacker, just thinking like, what would a bad guy do on my application? And I realize this could also steer you away from developing, so it shouldn't be a distraction. It should just be considered something that you add on to your process. So for the most part, this is really just what I want to go over, just to start as either a dialogue or something that we're all reviewing, to get a better understanding of what's out there and what could potentially put you at risk. So if there are any questions, I'd love to answer them as best I can. Thanks. Sure, right?
So is that similar to red team?
You repeat the question.
Oh, yeah. So you're asking if it's similar to red team? So for anyone who doesn't know what red team is, that's offensive security. And when you're saying, is it similar to red team, what exactly?
The last thing.
Oh, do you mean like how you're threat hunting?
Yeah.
I think it is a little bit. I mean, I could be wrong just because when it comes to like InfoSec, everybody has their own definition of red team and blue team, and like if I say the wrong thing, it's live. Twitter. So for the most part, I'll say it's one kind of skill set to have on a red team. Like threat hunting, it's definitely thinking offensively, how can I break this thing? And that's something called penetration testing. If anyone is interested to look deeper into that. Good question. Anybody else? Oh, yes.
It's called a headline there, but it was talking something about in one of the sources about test-driven development. That's somehow spreading STP fires. Can you just give an overview of what that's talking about there?
Yeah, repeat the question.
How do I repeat this? So the question was, how is security test-driven development related to STDs? Is that safe to say? So that was just kind of a abbreviation for security. It should say STDD, security test-driven development. Something I wanted to further explore, and that research right there is that one is that came up with this source right here about abuser stories, because it's not necessarily like a technical library to run. You don't have like an STDD suite to check for any vulnerabilities, but it's more just to kind of think that way, because the trend is showing that a a lot of companies want to embrace a DevSecOps pipeline. So they're considerate of development, they're considerate of security, and they're considerate of operations. Mainly on a business level, it's because that reduces a lot of costs in the future, because there's just so many vulnerabilities out there that your company, well, my company definitely hides. I don't know why, but they never tell us. So like, it can cost a lot of money. Well, that's why they're trying to do it from the beginning. Yes.
You showed like React GitHub issues for XSS. Are those things that you think are involved in core React? Those are like edge cases. If you're doing a certain thing, you should be concerned about those.
I think they're definitely edge cases. My whole point is that web frameworks are going to be great, but they're not going to 100% solve the problem. It's really just to be mindful of what you're using, especially on the long run. When you have maybe, for example, an application that checks voter records. I mean, let's just assume that we finally have online ballots. If they use React and they didn't know about that cross-site scripting vulnerability and they're using other libraries, that could be the issue right there. It's just like, be mindful of what you're using and have that kind of security mindset, because your users depend on that. Yeah. Oh, yes. First you, and then you.
Can you extrapolate a little bit further on use case where that changing URL cause vulnerability on the user session, how that can propagate to other users or actually spread the attack beyond that?
So are you just are you asking how to just expand on how the URL attack could be even worse?
Yes.
Okay. You know, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I learned this about a month ago, so my knowledge is pretty limited. But I'm willing to bet one big thing is that the scenario right here is you're sending an email to somebody when tax season's coming up, and you're just saying, hey, don't forget to file your taxes. Here's the link. Click it to open. And what's featured in it is that URL like script tag. Once they open that link, if an attacker has their logs ready to go to track their events, they can just get all that information because they were able to use just that window object to just get as much information as possible. And that could lead to expanding on what information they have to provide context to different information that they are just collectively piecing together. Does that make sense? Does that answer some of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Are input forms susceptible to XSS, or is it a different form?
That's actually why I was going to say who didn't use web frameworks, because one of the solutions that you could have if you never touched on a web framework would be to sanitize the input. So one thing I've seen being a solution is creating an HTML character map. Whatever you're associating with, like backslash or what have you, you can convert that to a number so that when that injection happens, they'll stop. Yeah, it just won't happen. They'll close that gap, that vulnerability. Good question, though. Great.
Thanks. That fridge still looks pretty full. If you guys want to get another round, you want to come get set up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the last time I did this was like
Yeah. They were fine. I don't know how well it'll read on the. Huh? Yeah. But. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Next, we've got Austin to talk to you about React hooks. Keep it going.
or don't.
Now's a good time to stop keeping it going. Yes, start talking.
I don't have to volunteer for this. Everybody hear me? Yeah. Cool. I might slowly drift away. Let me know if you can't hear me or I need any more clarification on that. All right, so let's get started. Who has been using hooks over the last month? Production, yes, a little bit. Even just like playing around. Who's played around with hooks? Okay, good, because this is kind of a lower level basics. I wanted to start off with a with a joke about hooks. I had to. Mike was requesting one.
I think I was.
Yeah, it's a little wordy. So a pirate walks into a bar, right? Bartender goes, "Oh, what happened to you? You look like shit." Well, pirate says, "I feel fine." All right. Well, you got a wooden leg. What's up with that? Oh, I went to battle, cannonball on the leg, peg leg. But I'm fine. Bartender goes, "Well, you got a hook on your hands." "Oh yeah, I had a sword fight. Got my hand cut off. Got fitted for a hook." It's like, all right, well, what about the eye patch? It's like, oh, it was a nice day. I was on the bow of the boat. Bird shit in my eye. The bartender goes, yeah, I don't think you can lose an eye from that. Like, yeah, it was the first day with the hook, so. I thought that was good. There's a first word in there, but other than that, it was pretty clean. Okay, so I'm Austin, and I'm going to be talking about hooks. Why the hell am I talking about hooks? I've used them a little bit. Anyways, I'm a tech writer for the last 2 months. Like I said earlier, I have a blog post kind of running down the details a little more in depth than what I'm talking about today. I've been doing JavaScript for about 2 years plus. I love it. It's such a romantic language. I've been in Denver for about 3 years and been really headstrong about some mountain activities, mountain biking, snowboard, and whatnot. I've been trying to be creative since I was born. Let me know how that's going. And just trying to keep up on my dog in the last little bit. I got a little blue healer, so bags on the guys and stuff like that. So anyways, enough about me. Hooks. We are going to look at the pitfalls in React, and the reason we're doing that is that's why hooks are a thing. So we'll get into a little bit about that. We're going to go to the basics of hooks, just sort of what they are. Then we're going to try to get familiar with the basic ones. I'm going to be going over useState, useEffect. After that, we're going to go around some rules. If you guys haven't used hooks, there are some interesting rules around them. Once you kind of wrap your head around why they are the rules, they make sense and it's pretty easy to follow. And a little caveat on that, I think someone mentioned that there's a linter. That linter will help you out with a lot of these rules. We're going to understand custom hook, which is really awesome. When I originally wrote this just over a month ago, I thought useReducer and a custom hook was going to be the Redux replacement. But later in a blog post that I'm doing in a few weeks, like I mentioned before, to use context and useReducer, it's going to have Redux. So stay tuned for that. I'll show an example of a custom hook, and that'll be using useState and useEffect as well. And if there's time, I'll go over useReducer. Recently did a real deep dive into useEffect, so I have a little extra content about useEffect. So we'll see how the time goes, and you let me know if I'm going too long.
Mike's timing you.
Mike's timing me?
Yeah.
Mike's just laughing.
In my head.
Thank you.
He's like an atomic clock.
Keep it yourself. Okay, pitfalls of React. Everybody or most people are familiar with use React. It's been around for a while. Anybody just kind of getting to React in the last like 6-ish months, so to say? Sorry, it's totally changed. But yeah, so pay attention. I started React maybe about a year and a half, and this hook API is unreal. It's amazing, makes everything so much easier. But anyways, pitfalls, reusing logic is really tough. Passing down props through components multiple times, trying to get some data where it needs to go. They have some solutions, which a lot of people could be familiar with. High order components or render props. I find these to be a lot like magic tricks with cards. It's a little difficult when you're looking at them. It's kind of like, oh, how'd you do that? Then you learn it, and it kind of makes sense, and then all you want to do is keep using it. And I know I got in the habit of like, oh, high order component for this, render props for that, and everything. I'm still a big fan of render props, don't get me wrong. I think that's a really powerful way to architect along with hooks. So not knocking on it, but component logic with the class-based components and using the lifecycle method, we kind of ran into a problem with separated logic where some logic that should be coupled got decoupled. So you have to throw something in component did mount, component did unmount. Just kind of, once your app got really big, it got really confusing, I think. Then classes, fear and confusion with that. I remember going into JavaScript, I was really a huge Vue fan. Started with Angular before Vue. Then I got into React, and this was classes. I did a little bit of Java before I did JavaScript, and I was very pissed when I saw classes. And so.
It's real time.
Yeah, I don't know how long I left this up last time, but I think it's pretty long. I'm trying to set a record. Anyways, so hooks, basically, they are just functions, which is awesome. They're very easy to use. The main thing I like about JavaScript, I don't know. We're going back to JavaScript. We're getting itching away from classes. There's probably some use cases that, in my life, I don't find those use cases very often. So I'm really happy to get back into JavaScript, and using these hooks really allows React to kind of get back to the stuff that we know as like the core foundation and whatnot. So with that, we're adding functionality to functional components. So everybody's familiar with class components, and now you always had your little function component, which everybody loved, but you couldn't really do anything with it. That was pretty much just your container. Well, now that can be your everything, and it's so great. So again, getting rid of classes. I like it. Another thing, reusing stateful logic. That was really difficult if you didn't have a decent grasp on some state management tools like Redux and whatnot. Render props was really nice, and then the context API made things useful, but it got really confusing really quick if you had to nest some consumers and whatnot. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. You don't need to, but that's just a downfall you might run into. Or if you won't run into it, because you're using hooks. So anyways, the first one I'm going to go into is useState. This is a really heavy one. So everybody read. Yeah, it pretty much just adds local state, and the state is preserved within a functional component. It's incredible. It's super useful, and it's just, I think it's opened a lot of doors to people getting just wrap their head around React. I feel like the barrier to entry is just completely knocked down over the last month and a half or so. So this is an example of a class component. It's pretty simple. I'll give you a second to adjust it, but essentially it's just you click it and then it's disabled. And writing in React, you would feel like this is something a functional component should handle, but then you kind of got all this extra jargon to it. This is not a real life example, and real life examples will be a lot bigger and a lot nastier. But if you want to refactor this in the hooks, you just kind of got you got to think that the lifecycle method just gets it's waiting outside and hooks finally let in. And so what your life will look like when you let Conan O'Brien in your house, the lifecycle method, looks like this. It's great. It looks like JavaScript with a little JSX, which is nice, which is fine. But other than that, I think this is a lot more readable, a lot more digestible. It looks a little cleaner, and you just kind of see what's going on. Let's see. This right here, this destructuring, if no one's really familiar with that, this is about as far as you'll need to go understanding destructuring. But essentially, this useState function call is returning two values in an array. I don't know if exactly they're anonymous, but you can name them whatever you want, but they have to be in this order. This first one right here is your state. So in this case, a Boolean. And this is your set state. Acts a lot like it. It's not exact, but it works a lot cleaner. So that's kind of the basics of it. What's really cool about state too, not a lot of times you have a component that is just one piece of state into it. So with the useState method, you can call it as many times as you want. You can literally have 100 of these calls throughout a component, and everything will work fine as long as you follow the rules, which I'll go over. And it's very exciting. So it's just, yeah, I still feel this way. I've been doing this for just over a month with hooks, and I'm just like, it's unreal. Back to this. Yeah, once you get a little more useState calls in here, you have the opportunity to reach for another tool, which is really awesome, useReducer. Might get time to go into it at the end of the talk. If not, I'll have some information online about that pretty soon. But you don't want to overuse this too much. Again, caveats to rules are coming. And the placement of these calls are very important. So just keep that in mind, and I'll get that in a second. So, again.
The false you're passing is at the initial state of the state.
That's good. There you go. Yes, thank you. This parameter argument that you're passing into useState, that is your initial state. So what's happening is the useState method is called. This value is stuck into an array. Just call it the state array. It's inside React somewhere, and it's working. When this method, or when this component gets re-rendered, it does not call this again. It goes back to the array, and it looks for this value. And it's important to keep these in the same order, which is something I'll talk about in just a second. And React will know which state you're talking about when you call it, which is awesome. Same thing for useEffect, which I'll go into in a second. So useEffect is, in simple words, a replacement for the lifecycle methods for your functional component. It can take component did mount, component did update, component will unmount. Kind of takes all that out of the equation, and you get it all in one function. And what's great about that is you have all that logic that's needed in the lifecycle method in one function, which is very nice. So you can add the effects to the functional components, which is super important. Combining the lifecycle methods, like I said. And in this example, the useEffects call, the method gets called every time. Let's see if that's okay. useEffect method gets called every time a component gets rendered, unless you tell it to not render, or only render on its own. Just don't listen to that for a second. It's easier with an example. I thought I had that for a second. Okay, so anyways, We're component did mount, component did update. This should be pretty familiar. But notice here, you're just repeating yourself completely, which is, this doesn't feel good, doesn't feel good. So if you want to write this into a useEffect method, it's simply this. You don't have to destructure, you don't have to equal it to anything. The useEffect hook is just called like this, and I'll have more concrete examples. It's one argument is just a function, and that function is going to get called every time the component is re-rendered, unless you put a variable right here. This variable can be coming from useState. It can come from your props. It can come just about anywhere where the scope is available. But this useEffect will only get called again and update this only when count changes. Count doesn't change, it doesn't get called. So let's see what. All right, I'll give it some better examples, but is there any questions off your tongue that are dying to know and not clearing up?
When do you reach for useReducer versus useState? Like, what's your sort of line of the state? I've got 3 pieces of state, 10.
I would say, yeah. Okay, so the question is, when do you reach for useReducer? Which is an awesome question, and I will have a lot more on that on my next post. But I would say if you're having anywhere between 3 to 5 useState calls, I would reach for useReducer. But if you have 2 useState calls, and one of those values is dependent on the other state, well, let's say you have, let's see this. You have set clicked and you want to call this, but you have to use this variable in this call here, then I would use useReducer. It's kind of a scoping thing. We might get into it later, but essentially, if you have state that's dependent on each other like this, I would use useReducer. And also, if you have like 3 or 4 useState calls, I would use useReducer. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
On the set state, like the set link, the set disable.
Sure.
Do you know if those are still asynchronous or?
Asynchronous, can you elaborate?
Well, because set state is asynchronous
Yeah, it's not asynchronous. It's going to go in order. Yeah, those calls are not going to get called until the first one's called. They have to be in the same order. And I think the rules is next. I'll kind of get into why. But no, they're not. They have to go in order, same order every time. Any other questions? Something?
I was just curious. So I know in a class component, you use the component feedback to make an API call.
Sure.
Is there a lifecycle plan that's best for a functional component and make an API request?
useEffect is going to be the go-to. You want to make all your API requests come out of tail, but you're going to want to put it in useEffect. And again, the next post over there is it's really heavy into that. But yeah, useEffect. Yeah.
I was wondering, with the ability to use state and function components, do you see any reason to use class?
No. I do not. I think there's another one. You got another one?
Yeah, piggybacking on this, do you have a pattern you like for asynchronous calls inside of useEffect?
A pattern for asynchronous calls inside useEffect. Yes. I might get into that at the end. I think that's a little out of scope at the moment. I would use an asynchronous call inside useEffect. And depending on what you want to do, let's see what this is. Another caveat, kind of forgot about this. If you're calling an asynchronous function in here, if you have a piece of data inside useEffect, you should use it as a dependency to useEffect. That should not be skipped over. If I take count out of this and just leave the array, useEffect only gets called one time. That's it. But you're lying to React, and you don't want to have a relationship with your framework. That's just a lot of distrust and whatnot. It's not good. I'm going to show you some ways around that, which is really interesting. If you have a set state, so to say, like if you're trying to use one of the set calls in there, there's a way to get around the dependencies, because if you have a dependency on, you have a dependency right here, this is going to be called every time count gets called. And you can, this array can be as long as you want, but a good idea is to limit the amount of dependencies useEffect has. It's not necessary, but it's a good thought to have. So if I can take count out of here, I will. And I'll show you how. First, I'm going to go to, any more questions? We can keep going. Yeah.
Actually, I just wanted to add with the useEffect, since it has an arrow function, you could annotate as async as well, and then use the wait in the box.
You may just put async right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've never tried that, and I don't know off the top of my head any reason why not to do that. But I would imagine useEffect is not expecting that. The useEffect function call, this one right here, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I wouldn't mess with it. If you need an async call, you can write an async function in here, no problem. I haven't tried that. I think that's a great question. The question was, I think I forgot to say all the questions.
It's okay. Start back at the first one.
Okay, who had the first question? The question was right here. If you put async right here, if you pass in an asynchronous function, what would happen? I think a nice little caveat to that, you gotta be careful with async functions sometimes. Async await is awesome and syntactically like beautiful. I love it, but it does have some downsides to it compared to promises, where if you're not familiar with like the event loop wholeheartedly, async await is pretty much one of the only times that I know of that just like stops the event loop and waits for this thing. So you're kind of stopping your head with that. In context of this, I don't know what that would do if something got hung up, but I imagine this function was called. Anyways, that's something I will look into. I don't have a lot of time. Is that 10 minutes or I have 10 minutes? I had 10 minutes. Right, here's the rules that I've been alluding to for so long. Hooks must be called at the top level of your functional components. That is, like you saw in all my functional components, they're the first thing that happens. That's the first thing React needs when it's rendering these components. It needs to know the state, it needs to know it now. Here's an example real quick, top level. It's just the first thing you see. That's fine. Next, hooks cannot be called in conditionals or loops. They can, but it'll ruin the integrity of your component and state involved with it. And in essence, ruin your entire application. So they cannot be called inside conditionals or loops. But there's always workarounds. They can't be used in class components, because why would you use class component? You know I feel like. Anyways, and there's also a naming convention that kind of comes along with this. They don't really enforce it, but when it comes to custom hooks, if you put the use in front of a custom hook, that'll let you and the linter know that this is a hook-based component, and will apply the rules to hooks to that function as it does to functional components with hooks. And show that an example of custom hooks. So you can do this. Everything's at the top level, fine and dandy. You can't do this. You have your use state, but then you have an if statement, and then you try to set state if there is a name, if you found your father or not. And just if you did find your dad, there's just like a lot of weight on that. And it just messes up the whole application. So like I said, this use state call, if there's multiple of them, even if there's just one, it creates an array of state. And if there's an extra use state the next time this renders, React doesn't really know what to do, and the whole component integrity is just kind of shot. So you can use loops and conditionals, you just have to do it like this, and it's super easy. So check that out real quick. I'm going to go back to the other one. 5, 4, 6, check it out. It does the same thing. It's just how you organize your code where it's hit. So, there you go. Hope you find your dad. That was an elf joke. Anyways, custom hooks are really awesome. I thought this was going to be the killer of Redux. Not necessarily it's going to be, but I think it could be. Anyways, custom hooks are awesome if you have some logic in useState and useEffect, any of those things that you want to use in multiple components. It allows you to replace most cases of the higher order component. I didn't even need to read that, but it replaces most cases of higher order components in render props. So you can share this state between multiple components, which is really nice. And kind of like each use state has its own, it knows which call is which. Same thing with these custom hooks. You can call a custom hook all over your application, and React will know which one you're calling. You don't have to worry about kind of messing up a state of a certain application or a certain component and whatnot. And this custom hook jargon, I think this is going to be really huge in a lot of third-party applications like React Router or any other really heavy React libraries. Once those libraries start implementing hooks, I think custom hooks are going to be absolutely crazy. It's going to be awesome. Some other hooks to be familiar with, use context, use ref, and there's 10 altogether, so I advise you to check them out. I have a couple code examples real quick. I'm just going to go through. This is something new that wasn't originally in the presentation, so I'm just going to try to fly through it. I think some of the information is really useful. So here's an example function. This doesn't have any hooks besides useState, but if anybody's familiar with closures, classes don't act the same as functional components when it comes to closures, which is really interesting. I'll show you an example. If I click this 1, 2, 3, that's fine. And I show the alert, give it 3 seconds. I should change that to 1 second real quick. You get 3. If I click it 1, 2, 3, show alert, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 11, I still get 6. I don't know if you can see that, but it still says 6. The event handler is tied to the component state at the time the event handler is triggered. The event handler is tied to the component. So the exact same thing applies to useEffect. That's kind of why I brought that up. So useEffect saves the state for each individual render, no matter how fast or what you're doing with it, which is really interesting.
Can you pass out a function to call at the time to get the current state, like you could do in class components, or that doesn't work?
Are you asking if I click this 4 more times, show alert 4 more times, if I can get 8?
So like you passed alert a function to call get the state. It was called 3 seconds later. It doesn't work like that anymore.
No. But you can do that. I have a way you can do that. Because everybody has their own use cases on why they use this stuff the way they do. This is just really important to know when you're using useEffect. I know I'm just using event handler or event listener, but the same thing applies for useEffect. So I think that's interesting. And I'll get to getting the most recent ref of the state that you're looking for. This one is the example of, don't know. Each render has its own. Yeah, so this is the same thing, useEffect. And it sets timeout, and it names 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every time I clicked it, it saves the state of the click of the event handler. So that's really awesome. You don't have to super go into the code I'm doing. It's very simple. useEffect, set timeout. That's really it. If you try that in a class component, same thing, get 4. It's useful for some cases, it's not useful for others. It's just a mindset on when you're developing. Using lifecycle methods is a certain mentality, and using hooks is a little different. I prefer the hooks method. I always thought this kind of stuff was weird. This is also, if you're kind of new-ish to JavaScript, let's say in the last year or so, you're really familiar with let and const, but before it was just var. This is what var did if you're setting a timeout in a for loop or whatnot. And if you use let, you would get something more like this, which is really interesting. That's all based around closures. To get your functional component to act like a class component, you just use ref. That's it. So then you can click this as many times as you want. And 99999. So that's how you access the actual current state, instead of the state of the actual current. After this, this also goes on your question. No, it doesn't. I think that's next. This is just an example of going through the lifecycle methods, which I don't think is that important. And it's going up for 2,400 seconds anyways. Don't care. Okay, this goes on what you were asking about when to use Reducer. This is really interesting. So this is useState twice. There's count, set count, step, and set step. The step is if you're incrementing, how much are we incrementing? So if let's reset this. So right now it's just incrementing by 1. If I change the step, I cleared the interval and I'm back in the effect. Change it again, same thing. If I take this out completely, same thing. Okay. No, the step just doesn't work because it's not changing the step. Now, if I put this work, step back in. Okay, this is what I was getting at. Sorry, brain fart. I wanted to get at set count. If I put count right here, I just did this like 2 hours ago, so I'm still useless. If I put count in here, just because it's a dependency, when I do set count, which is count plus step, I'm going to get this changing and clearing the interval every time, and useEffect has 2 dependencies. And every time one of those dependencies change, you have to redo the whole setup and tear down.
So it's an OR.
It's an OR?
It's an OR of the dependencies list. It's if either one changes.
Yeah, so you're giving it a list of any of this stuff changes, do this. You can also put Boolean values, or you can say that this equals this change, which is awesome. I think you can put functions in there. But where this is getting at, so you put step in here, but if you want to take step out, back up again. Set count. If you put a function in here, say like that. This C, this argument right here, like that, that's going to be your current state. So that's going to be 0. And now that I don't have count within this set count, I can take it out of here. So that helps you kind of clear your dependency list on there. Last thing, to get rid of this step, use Reducer. And you can use dispatch instead. And you can actually take this out because useEffect knows about dispatch and a couple other functions like that. But essentially, this is running. And you can change whatever you want. And none of this is getting cleared or reran and set up or torn down. So this is when I would use useReducer. I would just aesthetics-wise, if there's too many set states, use Reducer. But this is kind of the cheat code for that. And I think that's about it. I'm sorry that last little bit was a little jumbly. I just did all this in 2 hours. Working on it. I would love some questions about that code or anything that anybody has in. Yeah.
So I've seen, like in videos and stuff, people talk about passing the empty array as.
Don't do that.
But it is like a way to fake components in that.
Yeah, you're lying.
So do you have a better way to do it?
Yeah, like this. Okay, so the only, I kind of take it back. The only reason when this should be full or have anything in it is if you're using any of those variables within useEffect. If it's something that's outside useEffect, you can put it right there. But the idea, you can put this empty array here, just, this will keep running because this actually still knows about dispatch. It doesn't matter if I have it in there or not. It does the same thing. Because the useEffect knows about dispatch, and there's 2 or 3 other things that it's known about. Can't remember off the top of my head. But essentially, kind of if I go back to this example, if I put count back here, and I don't have count, it's just not gonna, it just doesn't work. And so it's kind of balancing what dependencies you use. It's good to limit the amount of dependencies you're using for useEffect. But if you need it, use it. I wouldn't do this, because then this just doesn't do anything. So when you have an empty array, you have the possibility of something like this happening. I know this is a very simple example, but if React isn't aware of everything, or the useEffect isn't aware of everything you need to be aware of, you could run into problems. It could be really hard to track it.
So if you're saying, so what I'm thinking is like, I make an API call component did now, and I'm taking that data and setting it to state.
Yeah.
You're saying it would be better to use the reducer, to use useReducer in that case, and not necessarily and passing it in empty array.
Yeah, for a fetch.
Right.
Yeah, I would definitely use Reducer, but that's not necessary. We can talk about this after. I think it's a little bit out of scope, but I do know. Yeah.
With using custom hooks between different components, how does if you're building that hook in a component and it's not defined, how does it have reference to the custom?
You should ask the React team. It's magic. That's something I really didn't get into, but essentially, really quick. Damn it. We have time. So, I just wanted to show you a custom hook. Use media. This useState and useEffect. This doesn't exactly answer your question about using it multiple times, but I could use this in multiple components, and React knows the state of that call of the custom function.
That's just because you call it use media.
Say that again?
That's just because you called it use media.
Essentially, yeah, because it knows it's using hooks. Yeah. But essentially, this is a custom hook, and I can use this and I can just call this as a const, use media. Imagine this is the media query right here that I don't know, but I'm just passing in. So this is what small is, this is what large, and this function, this custom hook, passes a Boolean. And what it's going to do is let you know if the screen is small or large. And the alternative to this is render props, in my opinion, which looks like this. And it has this really weird hierarchy of component calls, which is just like a perception of what's happening. It's not what's really happening. But you have these nested components that aren't really necessary. And then you also have, this is what the setup, the custom hook would look like without custom hooks. So you got a component did mount, setup, when did I mount, and whatnot. So this just really cleans it up. Any other questions?
Just real quick,
Yeah.
I was curious on if there is a limit on how much data you pass to the state that you state.
I don't think there's really any limit to it.
Okay, so on API requests, like I can pass just like massive collections of objects.
I would imagine you'd want to use something more like useReducer, but I would say just because of the limit of the size and whatnot. But useState's really interesting too. Like you can pass it an object with all your state in it if it's kind of simple. And you can just kind of mess with that object with the set as long as you spread the object and change out the state they need, just kind of like a reducer without the reducer. Any other questions? Yeah, that felt really jumbly at the end. Sorry for I was taking in a lot as well. Thank you for sticking with me. If there's no more questions, I guess that's it. And if you feel like talking to me after, more questions, and go ahead, clap.
Great. Thanks, guys. So there's 30 pizza left? If not, there's plenty of beer left. If you did participate in what's going on in JavaScript land and you want to be in the running for the front-end masters trial memberships, then come on up and we'll take care of that. Otherwise, thanks for coming out. Hang out for a bit if you'd like, and we'll see you guys next month. Appreciate it.